filmation out for me, okay?
Thank you.
She was a single empty nester, making a new beginning.
It's like your life restarts.
She's making moves. Things are happening for her.
A new city, a new job, and a new man.
Things are going very well. He's just what she needs.
She's successful, she's in love, everything falls in place.
But then she disappears without a trace.
You coming home tonight or what? Call him when you get his message.
Have you heard anything from her?
Yes, sir.
Her SUV had been parked in the same spot, and that's what prompted him to call the police.
But he isn't the only one worried.
Her daughter hadn't heard from her in like 5 days.
She was afraid something like this might happen.
And the search for answers will reveal why.
He served more than 20 years in prison.
He had all these years to think about the mistakes that he had made.
You just simply can't get away with murder anymore.
November 10th, 2020. It's a busy Tuesday in Atlanta, Georgia, where life is just starting to return to normal after COVID-19 turned everything upside down.
The shutdown really impacted people and their feeling isolated and their connection to people. And then I noticed that folks were outside, at restaurants like life was normal again.
People were still cautious, but people were happy to get back out. And I think it was a big sigh of relief to be back into the world. People started to feel like themselves again.
But that afternoon, things still feel far from normal for Tracy Brock.
Tracy's kind of worried about her mom.
Tracy, who lives in Indiana, speaks to her mom, Shawn Macklin, in Atlanta almost every day.
I've been trying to reach you all weekend.
She considered her mom kind of like her best friend.
And now here we are in the pandemic, in the midst of it. She doesn't know what's happening. She can't get in touch with her mom.
Call me. Love you.
It's now been 5 days since they last spoke.
Tracy is concerned, so she calls and asks the police to go by there to do a welfare check.
Atlanta non-emergency, how can I help you?
Hello. I'm calling to request a welfare check on my mom. She has a broken foot.
Her mother had just hurt her foot, so she had a boot on her leg.
Tracy was concerned, had her mother fallen and couldn't get up.
I'm just worried.
"56-year-old Shawn Macklin had spent most of her life serving others.
Shawn was a compassionate person. She worked in healthcare. She dedicated her life in a field where she could help others.
Folks who work in healthcare love people. They love working with people.
But Shawn's greatest love was her daughter.
She was there for her family, and she was an amazing mother.
Mother and daughter were especially close.
She's like her best friend.
And once Tracy had moved out and started having kids of her own, Shawn was ready to make a big life change.
At 56, you can find yourself in limbo because, no, you're not 20, but you're also not 80. You have a lot of life ahead of you. So now what do I do? Where's my place in the world?
The search took her to Atlanta.
She really wanted to kind of live and enjoy, independence. So she moved down to Atlanta.
She got a job as an office manager with a local healthcare company.
Hi, you have an appointment this morning?
I have an appointment.
But even with a new city and a new job, there's still something missing.
She's looking for a partnership. Someone who can help make her feel more stable.
Okay, thank you so much.
Has anyone told you how infectious your smile is?
You can't say infectious in a doctor's office.
And in 2019, she met Bernard Stokes.
He's in his mid-50s, charismatic and charming.
Immediately, they hit it off. There's an instant attraction.
She's excited. Like, ooh, the potential is attractive.
You know, my schedule's pretty flexible. Think you might want to meet me for some coffee?
I'd like that. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
That was probably exhilarating for her, you know, and you fall really quick when that happens.
They get together and they start seeing each other. This is what Sean has been waiting for.
And she wasn't about to wait any longer.
The two of them decided to take their relationship to the next level, and they moved in together. Bernard was a maintenance man for an apartment complex, and because of his job, he got an apartment.
He had his own place. She has a good job. He has a good job. So things are going very well for Sean at this point.
She's successful, she's in love, she felt absolutely wonderful.
Okay.
But now Sean's daughter has called the Atlanta police, worried about her mother.
When she called, she said that they usually talk every single day and she hadn't heard from her in like 5 days.
I'm afraid she might have fallen.
Her mother had recently fractured her foot and was wearing a boot on her leg.
With this boot on her foot, it's probably more challenging to move.
Her daughter said she would have checked on Sean in person, but she lives out of state.
And with the pandemic still a threat, her travel options are limited.
In November of 2020, even though the pandemic was kind of settling down, we were still in limbo in Atlanta. People were still dying because of COVID. It was still a very, very serious disease.
Not being able to see loved ones, not being able to see friends. That whole social dynamic really caused people some stress and anxiety.
No problem. We'll get someone right over there.
Thank you.
A welfare check is basically 911 dispatcher would dispatch an officer out to a location, and the officer would basically knock to see if someone comes to the door. They may walk around, look in windows, looking for any reason for concern.
When the officer gets to Sean's apartment, someone answers his knock.
A man in his 50s opens the door.
It's Sean's boyfriend, Bernard.
You hear about Sean?
He expresses that he's worried about her.
He hasn't seen her since she left for work 4 days ago.
I hadn't seen her in a few days, but I already filed a missing person report.
In Atlanta, Georgia, 56-year-old Sean Macklin was making the most of her newfound freedom.
When you become an empty nester, it's like your life restarts.
She was looking for a life where she can enjoy herself.
And she'd found the perfect man to grow older with.
He's charismatic, just what she needs now, someone to love on her.
She's successful, she's in love. They were looking forward to building their future.
I hadn't seen her in about 4 or 5 days.
But now Atlanta police are at the couple's apartment after Sean's daughter asked for a welfare check.
She hasn't heard from her mom. She speaks to her mom every single day.
And when Sean's boyfriend Bernard comes to the door, he says he tried to report her missing.
When was that?
A couple of days ago.
And that was the last time you saw her?
It was a couple of days before that.
He said that they had some personal issues going on.
Issues? What type of issues?
Hell, I just asked her to move out.
He said that he and Sean were in the process of splitting up.
He was given the apartment through his work, and so it was her who had to leave. And she agreed.
We still care about each other, but you know it's for the best.
I found an apartment.
He said that she actually was already packing her stuff and preparing to move.
According to Bernard, that's one reason it took him a couple days to call the police and report her missing.
He says on Friday the 6th, Sean got up at her usual time to get ready for work.
I'll be out of here soon.
All right. I can help you move your stuff if you need me to.
Thanks. I'm off to work.
And then she left for work after that?
And that was the last time you saw her?
Yeah.
Bernard says he went back to bed and he didn't get up until it was time for him to go to work.
But he says that when he got home, Sean wasn't there.
Sean didn't come home that night, and Bernard thought maybe she spent the night at a friend's house.
But then the weekend came and went with no sign of her.
It wasn't until Sunday when he started getting worried.
He noticed that her SUV had been parked in the same spot as it was on Thursday night. That's what prompted him to call the police because he thought something was wrong.
I called the cops. They came out, but they didn't believe me.
I called 911 to say, hey, I'm concerned about her.
After the officers looked around, they said that they didn't see anything wrong.
Did I get a good number?
Especially after he explained that Sean was in the process of moving out.
But the officer conducting the welfare check isn't as willing to let things go.
After all, Bernard wasn't the only one who hadn't heard from her.
Had you tried contacting her daughter?
Well, she hasn't made contact with Tracy. That's why I'm here.
She haven't contacted Tracy? Something must be wrong.
Let me make contact with the detectives and I'll be in touch.
After talking to Bernard, the officer passes the information off to detectives.
First, he confirmed that he had called the police and attempted to report her missing.
In fact, they even find body cam footage from the encounter.
Have you heard anything from her? Yes, sir. That's why I called.
In the video, he explains the impeding breakup and how she's moving out.
Yeah, look around. Oh, go ahead. Look. Now, stuff haven't moved since then?
No, sir. And that was my concern.
With little else to go on, the officer's hands are tied.
I looked at the arrest record. She's not showing up on that either, as well as any hospital.
But based on what they've learned from Sean's daughter and Bernard, investigators certainly feel the situation merits a missing persons report.
Yeah, that seems kind of strange.
We'll take it from here. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
The detectives started by issuing a subpoena for Sean's cell phone records.
They know the phone records will show where she's been, if she's used the phone at all. It will ping her location.
Then the detectives follow up at the doctor's office where Sean works.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, hello, who are y'all?
Her boss explains that everyone loves her. She's a joy to work with.
She says that Sean is incredibly reliable and a hard worker.
She also says that Sean rarely ever calls in sick.
She always went to work on time.
So it was very surprising and shocking when she didn't show up and didn't call.
I tried to reach out to her Friday.
Sean's manager said that they sent text messages during the morning hours and then stated they tried to call during the afternoon. But phone went straight to voicemail.
She never called you back?
No, which was really unlike her.
So now detectives are curious. Did Sean talk much about her personal life at work?
Her manager says that she was pretty private.
That is, until recently.
She started opening up about issues she was having with Bernard.
They were going through a breakup.
And according to her manager, Sean and Bernard were not on good terms.
This contradicted what Bernard had told detectives.
The manager also said that one big issue stood out.
He was evicting her.
Give me my phone! Detectives investigating the disappearance of Sean Macklin have learned that her boyfriend, Bernard Stokes, was trying to evict the 56-year-old office manager from their apartment.
The breakup was not as amicable as Bernard had painted the picture.
Her manager actually stated Sean requested Monday off so that she can go to court to deal with the eviction.
Which is one reason Sean's manager wasn't too worried when she didn't show up at work on Friday.
I just thought she took off because, she was trying to find a place or something.
But then she says she received a strange call at the office on Monday.
Bernard called and asked for Sean.
She thought it was strange that he would call her job looking for her. When he knew that she was supposed to be in court with him.
I had no idea she was missing.
Well, thank you, ma'am, for your time.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
By the time detectives return to the station from Sean's workplace, the phone records they've requested are waiting for them.
They noticed she hasn't made any outgoing calls since Thursday, the 5th.
But there's several incoming calls, including calls from Bernard and Tracy.
That alone will cause detectives some concern.
However, the incoming call data does allow detectives to track Sean's movements.
The phone companies can tell detectives what location or what tower that person was near.
The phone pinged off of 2 towers.
The first ping was an hour southwest of Atlanta, in the small town of Grantville.
After it pinged in Grantville, it pinged again in Fairburn, Georgia. Now, Fairburn is halfway between Atlanta and Grantville.
So it seems like Sean goes to Grantville and starts making her way back to Atlanta.
And this was 7 hours after Bernard said that he last saw Sean.
And after that, the phone went dead.
It would be alarming if you're saying that the person is missing and then you see activity cease.
But do the phone records mean something happened to Sean? Or that she'd even gone to Grantville?
Someone else could have been in possession of the phone.
Hoping for more information, the detectives contact Sean's daughter, Tracy.
Hello?
They asked if her mother knew anybody in Granville.
I don't think so. She rarely knows anyone outside of work as far as I know. Why?
Well, her phone pinged there recently.
What?
She was already worried about her mom, and now it's even more.
She also told detectives that she's been doing a little digging on her own.
She was able to log into her mom's emails.
And what she found was troubling.
There was no activity since the 5th. There were several important emails that she didn't answer, and one was an approval for a new apartment.
The message was never opened.
Based on the phone activity and the unopened emails, the detectives believe Sean went off the grid sometime Friday.
Detectives asked Tracy, was there anyone who would want to harm your mom?
And that's when she said she was afraid something like this might happen.
What do you mean?
Well, I didn't want to say anything to begin with because I was hoping it was nothing.
But now, Sean's daughter reveals the awful truth.
Bernard was actually abusive towards her mother.
Are you sure?
Well, that's what she said.
Tracy says it started when her mother became suspicious of Bernard.
Where he's working as a maintenance man. He'll be in their houses for hours. So Miss Macklin would sometimes find it interesting that these women would want to cook for him. Wanted him to come by just to check.
Sean went through Bernard's phone looking for other women's messages and texts.
And it turned out that her suspicions may have been justified.
He was talking to another woman.
The hell are you doing?
And when Sean confronted Bernard about it, he turned violent.
Give me my phone. Give me my phone.
Tracy says that he actually broke Sean's arm.
Give me my phone!
And allegedly, the boot that she had on her foot was also because of him.
Did you ever witness him being violent?
No.
Have you ever heard him threaten her?
Not exactly.
But Tracy does say that her mother was growing increasingly afraid of Bernard.
She even took out a life insurance policy.
Tracy also said that her mother obtained a carry permit and got a gun.
According to her daughter, that's why she'd started looking for a new place.
But she didn't want to leave before having somewhere else to go.
I told her just to get out, go to a shelter if she have to. But she said she would be okay.
So at this point, Tracy is afraid that Bernard really harmed her mom.
The detectives are starting to think so too.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
We'll be in touch.
When they look into his background, they realize that there had been domestic calls made several times to the apartment.
Now, when police were called to come to Sean's and Bernard's house, they were all verbal arguments.
There isn't any evidence of physical abuse, including the injuries that Tracy claims her mom sustained.
But does that mean that what Sean told her daughter isn't true?
Domestic violence happens behind closed doors and not always is reported.
And in instances where the police will come, nothing will happen because the abuser is so good at hiding and disguising what is actually going on.
However, there are some things that Bernard can't hide from the detectives.
He has a litany of charges.
But what is most shocking is that in 1992, he was convicted of murder.
Detectives investigating the disappearance of Sean Macklin have just learned that her boyfriend Bernard has been previously convicted of murder.
In the 1992 murder, he killed his roommate.
At first, he says he murdered his roommate out of self-defense, thinking that the roommate was an intruder.
He told an entire story. How he heard noise, he grabbed a gun, and shot this person by mistake.
It might have worked, if not for one thing.
I'm leaving. Y'all need my money. I don't have your money. I'm leaving. You're not leaving, going anywhere. How you gonna try to make you?
His roommate had a feeling that he was going to do something to him. So what his roommate did was put a recorder in his pocket.
And the recorder told a very different story than the one Bernard gave police.
They actually had an argument. They were arguing about him moving.
This was a dispute over rent.
During this argument, he's asking Stokes questions. Why do you have that gun in your hand? What are you going to do with that gun? And you can hear the gun go off.
The recording even captured Bernard attempting to cover up the crime.
911, what's your emergency? Stokes calls 911, tell 911 that he believes that someone was trying to break into the home, and he mistakenly shot this roommate.
The tape was more than enough to put Bernard away.
He took that case to trial, he lost, and he was convicted.
He served more than 20 years in prison before being released on parole.
And now that Sean is missing, the detectives wonder if Bernard is making a second attempt at getting away with murder.
When he was caught the first time, he had all these years to kind of think about the mistakes that he had made.
After uncovering Bernard's prior conviction, the detectives reach out to his parole officer.
His PO says that since he's been released, he has been mild-mannered and he's trying to get his life together.
The parole officer also says that Sean knew about his past.
Sean was aware of this murder, and she was trying to help him. She had a loving heart. You know, she wanted to see him succeed.
That says a lot about her personality, right? She may have just believed in him, or maybe she wanted really to believe in love that bad to where she would kind of look past even murder.
But had her faith in Bernard ended up costing Sean her life?
Just because Bernard's parole officer speaks highly of him does not mean that he would not kill again.
Hoping to find out, the detectives head to Bernard's apartment with a search warrant.
How's it going? We got a warrant to search your apartment.
When detectives confront Bernard, he doesn't shy away from his criminal background, nor does he shy away from the domestic calls.
But he does say that Sean was the instigator.
She's jealous, she's controlling. She even tried to call my kid's mom and threaten her. It was crazy.
He definitely tried to make himself into the victim.
According to Bernard, that's why they were splitting up.
He said he just got tired of Sean's jealousy.
He just wanted her to leave.
And when she tried to stall it, she said she had to wait till she get her place.
That's why he had no choice but to file the eviction.
The detectives have their doubts, though.
Eviction wasn't the only way to get rid of Sean.
So she just left.
Yeah. And I'm not lying about her. Look here.
He tells detectives he has a video, and you can see how Sean was.
He actually recorded the last argument they had.
The video is only a few seconds long, but you can hear Sean yelling at Bernard from the bathroom.
I don't give a damn.
Shit, that's what I'm saying. You do them, but take it out on me.
I ain't taking nothing out on you. I won't take your life out on you. It's your life.
You do.
And Bernard explains that this is a clear indication that she was alive and well the morning of her disappearance.
He says this happened moments before she left for work.
But is it the proof Bernard claims it is?
And do you know where she went after she left?
No.
He told him it was none of his business since they were broken up.
And he also says that he went back to sleep after she left for work on Friday morning. And he didn't leave the apartment until it was time for him to go to work, which was around 8 a.m.
That's what Bernard claims, but the detectives aren't willing to take his word for it.
Well, we're going to take a look around. Hang tight.
And since they have a search warrant, there's nothing he can do to stop them from looking around.
They also luminol the apartment.
Luminol is a chemical that can reveal where someone has cleaned up bloodstains.
At first, the results are disappointing.
That's until they get to the bathroom.
And when we luminol the bathroom, you can see blood.
Lynn's disappearance have just found evidence of blood in the apartment she shared with her boyfriend, Bernard Stokes.
Luminol reveals that there is splatters of blood in the bathroom.
You can see blood smears on the bathroom handle, the bathroom sink, and also on the floor.
There's also blood on the molding and a comb on the counter.
It's not enough to prove that anyone was killed in the bathroom, but it is quite suspicious.
Hey, Bernard.
When detectives ask Bernard about the blood, he says he has no idea how it got there.
However, given all they knew about Bernard's criminal past and his alleged abuse of Sean, the detectives didn't believe him.
All right, we're going to have you come down to the precinct for some more questions. We'll meet you down there.
It's fine.
But before they head back to the station, the detectives stop by the apartment complex's management office.
They want to see the surveillance video, the hours surrounding Sean's disappearance.
When they review the video, they get the first evidence that Bernard is lying.
First of all, they're able to see Sean the evening before her disappearance.
On November 5th, around 7 p.m., you see on surveillance video, she exits her car and she goes into her building.
But they never see her leave again.
And there's no chance she could have left out a different exit?
No, we have 17 cameras. It'd have showed up if so.
You roll forward to the next morning?
Sure.
However, the cameras do capture Bernard leaving early the next morning.
They see Bernard leave the apartment on the 6th at 6:52 a.m.
Earlier, in his statement to police, he said he didn't leave till 8 that morning.
And the lie isn't the only thing the cameras catch.
We see him kind of back his pickup truck to the trash compactor area, and the bed was empty.
Unfortunately, the cameras don't pick up what happened.
But when he pulls back out 20 minutes later, there's several items in the bed.
One of the items that they see is a big box.
Where did this box come from? And why does he have it?
For detectives, the answer is simple.
Her body was in that box.
In his hallway, there's no cameras that lead to the compactor where we believe he drug her body. before he backed his truck in and picked the body up and put it in the truck.
Bernard then leaves the complex and doesn't return until 4:30 that afternoon.
And guess what's missing from the truck? That big box.
And when he gets out of the truck, Bernard is also wearing different clothes than he had on when he left.
So where did he go for 7 hours? What happened to the stuff in the bed of his truck? And why is he wearing different clothing?
Detectives believe there may be a way to answer at least some of those questions.
Detectives place a trace on his license plate for the truck.
The trace allows detectives to go through the reams of data collected by traffic cameras and license plate readers scattered throughout Metro Atlanta.
You just simply can't get away with murder anymore. We have too much technology.
After requesting the data, the detectives sit down with Bernard.
They want to see if Bernard's going to be honest.
Detectives ask him, what did he do in the moments after Sean left?
Unaware of what detectives have uncovered, Bernard sticks to his story.
I told you after she left, I went back to sleep and I didn't get up to about 8 a.m.
So detectives press him and ask him, did he go outside? And he says no.
You never left the apartment at all?
No, I was in bed.
Detectives then let him know, we saw you on camera, and then he explains, finally, oh yeah, I went out to go get a cigar.
Detectives don't believe him at all.
So detectives try to appeal to Bernard's compassion.
You must have loved Sean. Don't you want to help us find her?
Of course.
He acknowledges he cared about her and he wouldn't do anything to hurt her.
But then he reveals something that is very interesting to police.
He tells detectives that he believes Sean and her daughter organized her disappearance.
Why would they do that?
To get back at me, I guess.
He said Sean was mad that he was kicking her out.
And you didn't have anything to do with it.
That's what I've been trying to tell you.
But the detectives are about to call his bluff.
So, you don't have a problem taking a polygraph test?
And that's when he shuts down.
He does not want to talk anymore.
It's like I'm gonna need a lawyer.
Suspected of killing his missing girlfriend, Sean Macklin, 57-year-old Bernard Stokes is now refusing to say more to detectives without an attorney.
He stopped talking as soon as the detective suggested that he take a polygraph.
It's enough to convince the detectives that he's lying.
We know that they were going through problems. She was leaving him.
Give me my phone!
And so, as we know, an indicator of homicide is when the victim of the domestic violence finally decides to leave.
However, something is still missing.
You have a murder case without a body.
Which is why the detectives had high hopes for the license plate recognition data.
And when they receive the results of the trace, they get a clear picture of where Bernard went the morning Sean disappeared.
Bernard left Atlanta and headed to Grantville.
Exactly where Sean's phone pinged.
2 hours later, he was recorded in College Park, a few miles from where Sean's phone last pinged.
Then they pick up his truck in Riverdale at a store.
Through surveillance, we watch him buy new men's clothes, going into the men's bathroom, changing those clothes from the clothes that he had on from when he left the apartment, and then throwing those clothes into the dumpster.
But unfortunately, even with a detailed plot of Bernard's movements that day, detectives still come up short.
They never found her body.
Other than the hits of following him through the course of him driving throughout Georgia, we don't know what he did. That is something that's still a mystery to us.
Bernard, stand up.
Despite that, The detectives place Bernard under arrest for murder.
Phone data, the license plate, the blood in the bathroom, and the surveillance video was enough evidence to make a good case.
But without Sean's body, will it be enough for a conviction when Bernard goes on trial in October of 2023?
These cases are often very hard to prosecute.
That's a very difficult climb because you have jurors wondering, do you really know if this person is dead or not?
I'll be out of here soon.
When they lay out their case, the prosecutors contend that Bernard and Sean got into an argument because she was leaving him.
She got approved for her apartment the day that we believe this disagreement happened. Mr. Stokes knew that.
So you think you're just gonna move out?
I thought that's what you wanted.
It's possible that his goal in evicting Sean was another attempt at maintaining control. And when she did not beg for him back, when he lost that control, he couldn't take it.
The prosecutors admit that they don't know exactly how he killed Sean.
But they argue that her body was in the box Bernard hauled away from his apartment the morning she disappeared.
The prosecution also argues that Bernard only reported Sean missing to cover his tracks.
In addition, and this is how sneaky he was, he actually called Miss Macklin's phone and left voicemails on her phone to cover it up.
You coming home tonight or what? It's late.
When it's the defense's turn, Bernard says that he'd been just as desperate to find Sean as anyone.
Bernard maintained his innocence throughout the trial.
But Bernard's claims make little impression on the jury.
Even without a body, the jury believes that the evidence is sufficient to convict Bernard.
He didn't think that people would take all the steps necessary that would be required to prove him guilty of murder. And, we did.
He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
It's a welcome relief to those wanting to see Bernard off the streets.
When the judge sentenced him to life without the possibility of parole, it was even better. Because we know that he doesn't even have a chance, like he did for the 1992 murder, to get out and hurt anyone else.
But the prosecutors also see Sean's story as a warning to others.
Something that stuck with me in this case was that she stayed because she wanted to wait until she was secure enough to leave. I wish she had left.
It also continues to haunt the family and friends that Sean left behind.
It's challenging because they never found the body. When we're thinking about grief and we're thinking about closure, without having a body, having a memorial, it doesn't allow you to process your emotional experiences.
And for her daughter, Sean's loss means that her children will grow up without their grandmother.
Grief is tricky. It'll sneak up on you when you least expect it. So when grief comes out of nowhere, you flow with it. You process it. Find the different tools to help you connect to the loved one, to the memories. Process your emotional experiences. That way you don't get stuck in the quicksand.
Sean was a good woman who raised her daughter, who built a career and worked hard for herself. She thought she was lucky to find love again in her 50s, but instead, it ended her life.
The Hawaiian Islands have long existed in the collective imagination as a sanctuary. They are a remote archipelago surrounded by thousands of miles of the vast Pacific Ocean, offering a profound sense of isolation from the chaotic mainland. For decades, people have traveled to these shores seeking an escape, a place to leave their burdens behind, or a canvas upon which to paint a brand new life. In the summer of 1978, the coastal town of Kailua Kona on the Big Island embodied this promise perfectly. Characterized by its striking contrasts where jagged, dark volcanic rock meets the deep, rhythmic blue of the sea, the town was a serene haven. It was a place defined by its gentle trade winds, the slow and steady pace of island living, and the warm, golden sunsets that seemed to promise that tomorrow would always bring a brighter, softer day. Kailua Kona was a community where people felt inherently safe, insulated by the tight-knit nature of the local population and the overarching spirit of hospitality that defined the local culture. It was not a place where one expected to encounter the dark, sudden violence of the outside world. It was a place of beginnings, of healing, and of quiet contemplation. Yet, within this idyllic paradise, there existed environments of constant motion and transient anonymity. The Kona Hilton Hotel stood as one of the largest and most prominent establishments in the region during that era. A massive, bustling resort, it was a complex ecosystem of its own, designed to cater to the endless influx of tourists, business travelers, and vacationing families. A hotel of this magnitude operates on a continuous, uninterrupted cycle of arrivals and departures. Every single day, hundreds of strangers cross paths in the expansive lobbies, walk shoulder to shoulder down the long, carpeted corridors, and share the confined spaces of elevators, only to never see one another again. In such an environment, anonymity is the default state. The sheer volume of human traffic creates a paradoxical isolation where one can be surrounded by hundreds of people yet remain entirely unnoticed. The staff who manage this daily tide of humanity are the silent engines of the establishment. They are the familiar faces that provide comfort and service to the guests, operating in a highly structured routine of shifts, customer service protocols, and backstage logistics. To the guests, the hotel is a temporary playground, but to the employees, it is a demanding workplace filled with ambition, routine, and the pursuit of a livelihood. The Kona Hilton in the late 70s was a vibrant, dynamic space, pulsing with life, yet inherently porous, with people slipping in and out of its doors at all hours of the day and night, leaving scarcely a footprint behind. It was into this bustling, transient world that Leilani Castro Kim stepped in the summer of 1978. For Leilani, that summer was not about a temporary vacation or a brief escape. It was the definitive beginning of an entirely new chapter in her life. She was a woman in the midst of a profound personal transition. After many years of marriage to her husband, John Sain Kim, she had just finalized the painful and complex process of divorce. The dissolution of a long-term marriage is an emotional undertaking that fundamentally alters the trajectory of a person's life, carrying with it a heavy mixture of grief, exhaustion, and the daunting challenge of starting over. But Leilani was not a woman defined by defeat. As a mother of 3 children, she bore a massive responsibility that drove her to seek a better, more stable future. She made the significant decision to uproot her life, leaving behind the familiar surroundings of Hilo to move across the island to Kailua Kona. This relocation was not merely a change of address, it was a deliberate, courageous act of reinvention. She was building a new foundation for herself and her children, stepping away from the past and looking firmly toward the horizon of new opportunities. The move to Kailua Kona was accompanied by a promising professional shift. Leilani had recently secured a new position at the Kona Hilton Hotel, working in a role that matched her capabilities and drive. She was a woman who understood the intricacies of business and human connection. Her history painted a picture of a capable, dynamic professional. She had previously owned and operated her own jewelry store at the Hilo Mall, an endeavor that requires not only business acumen but also a deep understanding of customer relations and a flair for sales. Beyond that, she had proven her tenacity and skill as a highly successful insurance sales agent, achieving excellent performance records in a highly competitive field. She was, by all accounts, a sociable, engaging, and highly competent individual. At the Kona Hilton, she was not just an employee, she was in training to become a front desk assistant manager. It was a role that demanded responsibility, poise, and the ability to manage the very nerve center of the massive hotel. Because she was deeply invested in this new role and still navigating her transition, she was temporarily living in a room on the hotel premises during the workweek. This arrangement provided her with the convenience she needed to focus entirely on her rigorous training schedule and the demands of the busy front desk. Her life was moving forward with purpose and momentum. Just days before the tragedy occurred, Leilani had attended her old high school reunion. It was an event filled with nostalgia, laughter, and the reconnecting of old friends. To everyone who saw her, interacted with her, and shared stories with her during that time, Leilani appeared completely normal. She was looking toward the future. There were absolutely no signs of distress, no subtle hints of fear, and no red flags indicating that a dark cloud was gathering over her life. She was simply a hard-working mother, a dedicated professional, and a woman successfully navigating the challenging waters of a major life transition. The sheer normalcy of her final days stands in horrifying contrast to the brutal reality of what was to come. It underscores the chilling unpredictability of violent crime, highlighting how swiftly and silently a life can be intercepted. She was actively building a sanctuary for her family in a town known as a sanctuary, completely unaware that a deadly threat was already closing in on her within the very walls where she worked and slept. The juxtaposition between the hopeful, ambitious nature of Leilani's fresh start and the grim, final reality of her death is the haunting core of this case. A hotel room, typically a space of rest and security, was violently transformed into a scene of unspeakable horror. The space where she laid her head after long hours of training, the very place provided to ensure her safety and convenience, became a silent witness to a brutal end. When a life is taken so abruptly, especially one brimming with the momentum of a hard-fought new beginning, the shockwaves resonate far beyond the immediate aftermath. The unnatural termination of Leilani's journey left a profound void, not just in the bustling corridors of the Kona Hilton, but deeply entrenched in the lives of those she left behind. The suddenness of the act stripped away a mother from her 3 children, leaving them to navigate the rest of their lives in the shadow of an incomprehensible loss, grappling with a tragedy that offered no explanations, no reasons, and no closure. More than 4 decades have slipped away since that summer in 1978. 40 years of changing seasons, of passing generations, and of relentless technological advancement. The town of Kailua Kona has grown and evolved, the hotel industry has transformed, and the world is an entirely different place than it was when Leilani last stood behind the front desk. Yet, despite the massive passage of time, the shadow cast by what happened in that hotel room remains frozen in place. The case of Leilani Castro Kim is a cold case, a term that fails to capture the agonizing, enduring pain of a family suspended in a state of eternal waiting. A cold case is not a closed book. It is an open wound that refuses to heal. It is a story with a beginning and a devastating middle, but entirely devoid of an ending. For the investigators who have looked at the files, and especially for the children who had to grow up without their mother, the silence of the past 40 years is deafening. The killer walked out of that transient, crowded hotel and simply vanished into the ether, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and profound injustice. This is not just a story about a crime scene in a luxury resort. It is an exploration of a life interrupted, of a courageous woman whose aspirations were stolen in the dark. It is a meticulous examination of how an investigation can hit an impenetrable wall, frustrated by the limitations of its era and the complex logistics of a crowded space. It is a stark reminder that time does not inherently heal all wounds, and that the pursuit of truth has no expiration date. As we delve into the details of Leilani's final hours, the initial response by the authorities, the frustrating bottlenecks that stalled the investigation, and the modern efforts to finally bring a killer to light, we must remember the human heart at the center of this mystery. We are stepping back into the summer of 1978, into the bustling lobbies of the Kona Hilton, to piece together the fragments of a shattered life, in the hope that even after all these years, the silence can finally be broken. To understand the profound tragedy of what happened in the summer of 1978, it is absolutely essential to first understand the woman at the center of this devastating mystery, Leilani Castro Kim, and the pivotal juncture at which her life was violently interrupted. The summer of that year was not just another season for Leilani. It was a deeply significant milestone marking the beginning of an entirely new era, a period defined by courageous transitions and the formidable task of rebuilding a life from the ground up. She had recently navigated the emotionally taxing and complex process of finalizing her divorce from her husband, John Sain Kim, closing a significant and lengthy chapter of her personal history. The dissolution of a marriage is an inherently destabilizing event, one that forces a person to reevaluate their identity, their future, and their sense of security, often leaving them emotionally depleted. However, the picture that emerges of Leilani during this incredibly challenging time is not one of a woman succumbing to the heavy weight of a broken relationship, but rather one of a remarkably resilient and determined individual actively charting a new course. As a devoted mother of 3 children, the luxury of despair was simply not an option for her. Every decision she made, every massive change she initiated, was fundamentally anchored in her profound responsibility to provide stability, opportunity, and a secure future for her family. Her children were the undeniable driving force behind her remarkable ambition and her willingness to uproot her entire existence in pursuit of a better horizon. This unyielding dedication prompted her to make the significant geographical and psychological leap of moving from the town of Hilo, located on the lush, rain-swept eastern coast of the Big Island, all the way to Kailua Kona on the sun-drenched, bustling western shore. This move across the island was highly symbolic, representing a deliberate step away from the familiar echoes of her past and a bold stride into an environment teeming with fresh economic opportunities and the promise of a clean slate. The decision to relocate an entire family is a massive logistical and emotional undertaking, requiring immense foresight and courage, qualities that Leilani possessed in abundance as she sought to construct a renewed sanctuary for herself and her 3 children. This transition required not only a change of scenery, but a complete professional reinvention, a challenge she met with the same dynamic energy that had characterized her entire working life. Leilani was widely recognized by her peers, colleagues, and friends as an exceptionally sociable, outgoing, and deeply capable woman, possessing a natural aptitude for business and a genuine talent for human connection. Her professional background was a testament to her versatile intelligence and her relentless work ethic. Before moving to Kailua Kona, she had successfully navigated the demanding world of retail entrepreneurship as the proud owner and operator of a jewelry store located within the Hilo Mall. Running a jewelry business requires a highly specific and refined skill set. It demands an acute eye for detail, a deep understanding of financial management, the ability to cultivate profound trust with a diverse clientele, and a charismatic, engaging personality capable of making every customer feel valued. Her success in this challenging arena spoke volumes about her organizational skills and her inherent business acumen. But her professional prowess did not stop at retail. Leilani had also ventured into the fiercely competitive sector of insurance sales, an industry notoriously unforgiving to those who lack resilience and persuasive communication skills. In this high-pressure environment, she did not merely survive, she thrived, earning a formidable reputation as a top-performing sales agent. Achieving such high marks in insurance requires an extraordinary degree of self-motivation, the ability to handle constant rejection with grace, and an innate capacity to quickly build meaningful rapport with strangers. These impressive professional milestones paint a vivid portrait of a woman who is fiercely independent, highly intelligent, and deeply committed to achieving financial security and success through her own relentless efforts. It was this exact combination of interpersonal warmth, sharp business intelligence, and proven managerial capability that made her an ideal candidate for the bustling hospitality industry of Kailua Kona. Just about 2 weeks prior to the horrific event that would end her life, Leilani embarked on a highly promising new career path at the Kona Hilton Hotel, a massive and prestigious establishment that stood as one of the premier luxury destinations in the entire region during that era. The hotel was a sprawling complex, a bustling epicenter of tourism that required a highly coordinated and efficient staff to manage the constant, overwhelming influx of guests from around the world. Leilani was not merely hired as a standard employee. Her extensive background and obvious leadership potential had secured her a position in an intensive training program to become an assistant manager at the front desk. The front desk of a massive resort like the Kona Hilton is the absolute nerve center of the entire operation, a high-stakes environment requiring rapid problem-solving, exceptional diplomacy, the ability to manage a diverse team of employees, and the grace to maintain a welcoming smile under immense pressure. Her colleagues quickly recognized her as a dynamic and energetic presence, someone who seamlessly integrated into the demanding rhythm of hotel management and brought a wealth of practical business experience to the role. Because she was deeply immersed in this rigorous training phase and determined to excel in her new position, Leilani made the pragmatic decision to live temporarily in a designated room within the hotel premises during her workweek. This arrangement was a temporary sacrifice, a strategic choice made to eliminate a lengthy daily commute, allowing her to focus all her available energy on mastering the complexities of her new management role. It was a clear demonstration of her legendary work ethic and her absolute commitment to succeeding in this new chapter, ensuring she was always readily available to learn the intricate operations of the expansive resort. By staying on site, she integrated her life completely with the hotel, moving seamlessly between the high-pressure environment of the front desk and the private refuge of her temporary quarters. The juxtaposition of her ambitious professional momentum and the profound tragedy of her death is perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of this entire case. In the final days leading up to the end of July 1978, Leilani's life appeared to be a picture of hopeful normalcy and forward progress. She was a woman successfully navigating the turbulent waters of a major life transition, firmly holding the reins of her own destiny. Just days before she was murdered, she attended a joyous gathering for her old high school reunion. This event was a celebration of enduring friendships, a time to reminisce about the past while eagerly sharing exciting plans for the future. Friends and former classmates who interacted with her during this gathering saw exactly what her new colleagues at the Kona Hilton saw: a vibrant, forward-looking woman who was happy, confident, and deeply engaged in the process of building a beautiful new life for herself and her beloved children. There were absolutely no dark shadows hanging over her demeanor, no whispered anxieties, and no subtle changes in her behavior to suggest she was experiencing any form of distress. She did not act like a woman who felt threatened. She did not express any fear for her safety, and there was not a single discernible red flag to indicate that she was in any sort of immediate danger. The sheer, unadulterated normalcy of her behavior during those final days makes the sudden, violent interception of her life all the more incomprehensible and deeply chilling. She was a woman operating at the absolute peak of her capabilities, channeling all her considerable talents and energy into creating a secure sanctuary for her family, completely and utterly unaware that a fatal threat was silently converging on her within the very walls of the establishment she was working so diligently to manage. The portrait of Leilani Castro Kim is not one of a victim defined by her tragic end, but rather of an extraordinarily capable, loving, and ambitious woman whose bright, promising future was inexplicably and brutally stolen at the exact moment she was stepping into the light of a brand new beginning. The evening of July 31st, 1978, descended upon the Kona Hilton Hotel just like any other typical summer night on the bustling western coast of the Big Island, bringing with it a palpable shift in the atmosphere as the intense tropical heat of the day gradually surrendered to the cooler, gentler trade winds sweeping in from the vast Pacific Ocean. Inside the sprawling, luxurious complex, the ambience transitioned from the frantic, sun-drenched energy of daytime vacationers returning from beaches and excursions to a more subdued, elegant rhythm characterized by the soft hum of conversation in the dining areas. The clinking of glasses in the lounges and the steady, continuous flow of guests moving through the expansive, brightly lit lobby. At the absolute epicenter of this complex, carefully orchestrated ecosystem stood the front desk, the vital nerve center where every arrival, departure, request, and complaint was processed, requiring the staff to maintain an unwavering facade of professionalism, efficiency, and warm Hawaiian hospitality, regardless of the immense pressure or the late hour. Leilani Castro Kim was stationed precisely there, thoroughly immersed in the demanding responsibilities of her evening shift as she navigated the rigorous training required to become an assistant manager, a role that demanded her complete attention, sharp logistical thinking, and the natural, engaging sociability she had honed over years of successful business experience. The hours ticked by steadily as she managed the myriad tasks associated with the front desk operations, her presence a dynamic and reassuring constant to both the guests she assisted and the colleagues who worked alongside her in the bustling, brightly illuminated space. As the night deepened and the volume of foot traffic in the lobby slowly began to wane, the operational pace of the hotel shifted toward the quiet, maintenance-focused routines of the late-night hours, leading up to the highly anticipated moment when the evening shift would finally conclude. At approximately 11 o'clock at night, the official end of her scheduled workday arrived, marking the moment for Leilani to step away from the demanding glare of the front desk, close out her responsibilities for the evening, and begin the transition from a highly focused professional to a woman seeking the quiet comfort of rest. Her departure from the work area was entirely unremarkable, characterized by the same mundane, everyday interactions that define the end of any normal shift in a busy workplace, with colleagues clearly observing her as she gathered her belongings, exchanged standard pleasantries or brief farewells, and walked away from the desk just as she had done on previous nights. Because she was temporarily utilizing a designated room on the hotel premises to accommodate her intensive training schedule and eliminate the burden of a long daily commute, her journey from the vibrant, public sphere of the lobby to the private, isolated sanctuary of her living quarters required only a very short, seemingly safe walk through the familiar, carpeted corridors of the massive resort. This brief, unremarkable transit from the front desk to her temporary room is a detail of profound, haunting significance, as it represents the very last time anyone would ever definitively confirm seeing Leilani Castro Kim alive, marking the terrifying threshold where the known facts of her evening abruptly dissolve into a dark, impenetrable mystery. Once the door to her room closed behind her, the timeline plunges into complete silence, obscuring whatever horrific sequence of events unfolded within the supposedly secure confines of that space, leaving only the grim, devastating aftermath to tell the story of the remaining nighttime hours. The transition from the dark, silent hours of the night to the bright, demanding reality of the morning is typically a routine, uninterrupted cycle in the hospitality industry, where the hotel awakens and prepares to begin the intricate process of serving its guests all over again. The morning of August 1st, 1978, began with this standard, bustling momentum as the morning shift staff arrived to take over operations, seamlessly continuing the continuous cycle of service that defines a major resort like the Kona Hilton. For Leilani, who had established a formidable reputation as a deeply committed, highly professional, and exceptionally punctual individual, the start of her morning shift was an absolute certainty in the minds of her colleagues and supervisors, who fully expected her to arrive on time, prepared, and ready to tackle the demands of the day with her characteristic energy and confidence. However, as the designated start time for her shift arrived and the minutes began to tick past without any sign of her presence, a subtle but distinct ripple of unease began to quietly spread among the staff stationed at the front desk. In a professional environment, and particularly for an individual with Leilani's proven track record of reliability and dedication, an unannounced absence is never casually dismissed. It is an immediate, glaring anomaly that instantly commands attention and raises concern. As the delay extended and it became undeniably clear that she was not merely running a few minutes late, the initial assumption of a simple misunderstanding or a minor oversight quickly gave way to a deeper, more pressing sense of worry, prompting the hotel management to take decisive action to ascertain her well-being. Recognizing the highly unusual nature of her absence, especially given her temporary residency on the very premises where she was scheduled to work, the management dispatched personnel to conduct a formal wellness check. A standard but inherently anxiety-inducing protocol designed to ensure the safety of an employee who has inexplicably failed to report for duty. The physical walk to her room, retracing the exact same steps she had taken just hours before, must have been laden with a growing sense of apprehension as the emissaries from the management team navigated the quiet, brightly lit hallways of the resort, moving closer to a discovery that would fundamentally shatter the peaceful illusion of the vacation destination. Upon arriving at the designated door, the standard procedure of knocking and announcing their presence was met only with a chilling, impenetrable silence from within, a lack of response that immediately escalated the situation from a routine check into a critical intervention, necessitating the use of a master key to gain access to the interior of the room. As the lock disengaged and the heavy door was pushed open, the personnel stepping across the threshold were violently thrust into a reality that defied all comprehension, instantly transforming the mundane space of a standard hotel room into the epicenter of an unspeakable tragedy. The visual shock of the scene before them was absolute and paralyzing, completely overwhelming the senses as the pristine, orderly environment expected of luxury accommodations was replaced by the chaotic, devastating aftermath of a brutal, fatal encounter. The search of the room led them directly to the bathroom, where the ultimate, horrifying truth of Leilani's inexplicable absence was finally and violently revealed, presenting a scene so deeply traumatic that it would forever alter the lives of those who witnessed it. Leilani Castro Kim was found dead within the confines of the room's bathtub, a stark, heartbreaking tableau that instantly extinguished any lingering hope and confirmed the absolute worst fears of the colleagues who had come searching for their missing friend and co-worker. The immediate, frantic realization of the gravity of the situation triggered a rapid, urgent chain of events, shattering the quiet morning routine of the hotel as management instantly pivoted from hospitality operations to crisis management, frantically contacting the local authorities to report the grim discovery. The sudden blare of sirens and the rapid arrival of the Hawaii Police Department shattered the carefully maintained serenity of the Kailua Kona morning, signaling the beginning of a massive law enforcement response as uniformed officers and detectives descended upon the sprawling resort. Their presence an undeniable confirmation that a terrible crime had occurred within the supposedly safe walls of the establishment. The immediate priority of the responding officers was the swift and absolute preservation of the area, leading to the rapid establishment of a secure perimeter that strictly cordoned off the entire vicinity surrounding the room, transforming a significant portion of the luxury hotel into a highly restricted, heavily monitored active crime scene. This immediate lockdown was a critical, necessary measure designed to freeze the environment exactly as it was found, preventing any further contamination or destruction of potential evidence by unsuspecting guests or staff members who were entirely oblivious to the tragedy that had unfolded just doors away from where they slept. As the initial shockwaves of the discovery began to ripple through the upper echelons of the hotel administration and the tight-knit community of employees, the stark, brutal reality settled heavily over the Kona Hilton, a place dedicated to leisure, relaxation, and escape had become the setting for a violent, premature end to a promising life. The meticulous, methodical work of the investigators began almost immediately upon their arrival, as seasoned detectives carefully stepped into the meticulously preserved space, their trained eyes scanning the room to begin the arduous, complex process of reading the silent, bloody narrative left behind by a killer who had already vanished into the anonymous, transient flow of the island. The contrast between the vibrant, hopeful trajectory of Leilani's life just 24 hours prior and the cold, clinical reality of the crime scene processing was a devastating testament to the fragility of human existence, highlighting how swiftly and mercilessly a bright future can be extinguished. From the moment the door was opened by the concerned hotel staff, the investigation was thrust into an immediate, high-stakes race against time, fighting against the inherent challenges of the bustling environment, the transient nature of the surrounding population, and the terrifying realization that a predator had successfully operated within their midst and escaped undetected. Every single action taken by the police in those chaotic first hours, from the securing of the doorways to the initial, sweeping assessments of the room's condition, was fundamentally geared toward capturing the faintest echoes of the violence that had claimed Leilani's life, initiating a relentless, desperate search for answers that would span across decades of frustrating silence and agonizing uncertainty. The arrival of seasoned detectives at the Kona Hilton Hotel immediately transformed the sprawling resort from a vibrant destination into a restricted zone of intense law enforcement activity. Upon crossing the threshold of Leilani Castro Kim's temporary living quarters, the investigators were instantly confronted with a reality that dispelled any lingering, desperate hopes of a tragic medical emergency or a natural passing. The visual evidence presented within the confined space of the bathroom, specifically the positioning of the body within the bathtub and the surrounding environmental indicators, unequivocally dictated that this was a deliberate, violent act of murder. The realization that a homicide had occurred within the supposedly secure walls of a premier hospitality establishment triggered a meticulous, highly regulated protocol for crime scene processing, requiring every officer present to move with extreme caution to preserve the integrity of the space. In the immediate aftermath and continuing to this very day, the Hawaii Police Department made a strategic decision to strictly control the flow of information regarding the specific mechanics of the crime. Critical forensic details, including the precise cause of death, the specific nature and number of the wounds inflicted upon the victim, and the potential identification of any weapon used in the attack, were deliberately withheld from the public domain. This veil of secrecy is a standard, highly necessary investigative tactic designed to protect the core integrity of the active case, ensuring that only the actual perpetrator and the investigating detectives possess the intimate, gruesome knowledge of exactly what transpired in that room. While this withholding of information frustrates public curiosity and leaves a void in the narrative of her final moments, it serves as a vital safeguard against false confessions and provides investigators with exclusive, undeniable facts to verify the authenticity of any future leads or statements. The silence surrounding these specific details creates a profound, lingering shadow over the crime scene, forcing the focus of the public and the family away from the macabre mechanics of the murder and toward the desperate, ongoing search for the identity of the person responsible for such a brutal transgression. The physical processing of the room was a painstaking endeavor severely constrained by the technological realities of the late 1970s, an era separated from the modern landscape of criminal justice by a massive, revolutionary gap in forensic science. The detectives working the scene were forced to rely entirely on the traditional, analog tools of their trade, meticulously dusting every conceivable surface for latent fingerprints, hoping that the killer had been careless enough to leave behind the unique, swirling ridges of their identity. They crawled across carpeted floors, utilizing bright lights and magnifying lenses to gather evidence, collecting loose hairs, stray fibers, and anomalous threads that might link a suspect to the immediate vicinity of the victim. Furthermore, the crime scene technicians carefully documented and collected various biological traces and fluids found within the room, treating each sample with the utmost care, fully aware that these microscopic remnants held the biological signature of the perpetrator. However, the profound tragedy of this meticulous collection process lies in the historical context of the year 1978, a time before the advent and implementation of DNA profiling in criminal investigations. The detectives possessed the physical evidence, the actual biological material left behind by the killer, but they were trapped in an era that lacked the scientific capability to unlock the definitive, undeniable answers hidden within those microscopic cells. They were looking at the genetic blueprint of a murderer, yet they were entirely blind to its meaning, restricted to rudimentary blood typing which could only broadly categorize suspects rather than definitively identify a single individual. The various personal items scattered throughout the room were cataloged and examined for any indication of a struggle, a forced entry, or a potential motive. While the physical guest logs of the hotel were seized to establish a baseline of who was officially present on the property during the crucial time frame. Every piece of collected evidence was sealed, securely labeled, and placed into storage, becoming a silent, waiting archive of a brutal crime, perfectly preserved but tragically unreadable by the investigators who so desperately needed its secrets to find justice for Leilani. With the physical evidence collected but severely limited in its immediate investigative utility, the detectives swiftly pivoted their primary focus toward the intricate, complex web of human interactions that define the last 24 hours of Leilani's life. Establishing a definitive timeline of her movements and identifying every individual who had the potential for contact with her became the paramount objective, initiating a massive, exhaustive wave of interrogations and background checks. The investigation naturally encompassed those in closest physical proximity during her final shift, leading police to conduct intense interviews with every coworker who shared the front desk area, hoping to uncover subtle tensions, unusual interactions, or unnoticed observations that might point toward a suspect. Simultaneously, the investigative lens was cast wider to include the vast, transient population of the hotel itself, focusing on the guests who were registered, visiting, or utilizing the public facilities during the late evening and early morning hours, creating an overwhelming logistical challenge of tracking down individuals who were often merely passing through the island. The detectives also delved deeply into Leilani's personal life, systematically interviewing her network of friends, her casual acquaintances, and anyone she had interacted with during her recent high school reunion, searching for any hidden conflicts, jealousies, or unspoken threats that might have followed her to her new life. Given the recent and profound changes in her domestic situation, her ex-husband, John Sain Kim, along with any other individuals connected to her past relationships, were naturally and thoroughly scrutinized. As law enforcement protocol demands the rigorous elimination of those with the most intimate personal connections to the victim. Every person who could potentially confirm seeing her after she clocked out of her shift, every individual who walked the same corridors, and every person whose name appeared on a hotel registry was subjected to questioning, generating mountains of statements, alibis, and observations that required meticulous cross-referencing and verification. Despite the immense scale of the investigative effort and the sheer volume of individuals questioned, the detectives rapidly found themselves colliding against a series of insurmountable bottlenecks that effectively paralyzed the forward momentum of the case. The most formidable obstacle was the very nature of the crime scene's location, a sprawling, highly populated luxury resort operating at the peak of the summer tourist season is a chaotic environment defined by constant, unregulated human movement. Unlike modern facilities heavily monitored by comprehensive digital surveillance networks, the Kona Hilton in 1978 was entirely devoid of closed-circuit television cameras, meaning there was absolutely no visual record of who traversed the hallways, who lingered near the elevators, or who might have quietly slipped away into the tropical night. The sheer volume of people checking in and out made it impossible to establish a complete roster of everyone present on the property, allowing a perpetrator to easily blend into the endless, anonymous stream of vacationers and staff. Furthermore, the investigation suffered from a devastating lack of direct, credible witnesses, despite the proximity of hundreds of other people sleeping in adjacent rooms and walking nearby corridors. No one reported hearing the sounds of a struggle, and absolutely no one witnessed the killer entering or exiting Leilani's temporary quarters. In the absence of a confession, which often breaks a complex case wide open, the detectives were forced to rely entirely on the circumstantial evidence and the limited forensic analysis available to them, which tragically proved to be insufficient. Countless individuals were interviewed, suspicions were raised, and theories were passionately debated within the police department, but the critical, undeniable bridge of evidence required to legally connect a specific individual to the murder remained agonizingly elusive. The high legal threshold required to secure an arrest warrant and formally charge a suspect with homicide could not be met, leaving the investigators trapped in a deeply frustrating limbo. Possessing a profound understanding of the crime, but completely lacking the definitive proof necessary to hold anyone accountable. As the immediate, frantic days following the murder slowly stretched into agonizing weeks and then into protracted, silent months, the agonizing reality of a stalled investigation began to settle heavily over the Hawaii Police Department and the devastated family waiting for answers. The detectives stubbornly refused to concede defeat, continuously pushing forward by exhaustively reviewing endless pages of local and long-distance phone records, desperately searching for any anomalous communications or hidden connections that might have been overlooked during the initial, chaotic phase of the inquiry. They rigorously analyzed countless reports of suspicious activities, petty crimes, and unusual behaviors documented throughout the wider Kailua Kona region in the days surrounding the murder, hoping to identify a pattern or a transient individual whose presence aligned with the timeline of the tragedy. Yet, despite their relentless dedication and the systematic exhaustion of every conceivable investigative lead, each promising avenue eventually culminated in a frustrating dead end, generating a mountain of circumstantial data that ultimately failed to produce a viable, prosecutable suspect. The vibrant, urgent energy of the active manhunt gradually, inevitably began to wane as the flow of new information dwindled to a trickle, forcing the allocation of precious police resources toward more immediate, unfolding crises within the jurisdiction. The files containing the documentation of Leilani's life, the details of her death, and the records of the futile search for her killer were transitioned from the active desks of detectives into the silent archives of the department. The tragic, unresolved narrative of the devoted, loving mother who sought a fresh start only to find a brutal end became a cold case, a stark, clinical designation that entirely fails to capture the enduring, echoing heartbreak of a family left behind in the dark. The killer had successfully navigated the logistical complexities of a crowded resort, evaded the intensive scrutiny of law enforcement, and vanished without a trace, leaving behind a chilling legacy of impunity and a profound, agonizing void where justice should have been. The American criminal justice system is fundamentally built upon the expectation of an eventual resolution where the painstaking efforts of law enforcement culminate within the solemn walls of a courtroom to present a narrative of truth to a jury of peers, but in the profoundly tragic case of Leilani Castro Kim, this foundational expectation was entirely shattered, leaving behind a vast and echoing void where accountability should have resided. Because the intensive investigations of 1978 failed to yield a suspect with sufficient evidentiary backing, there was never a dramatic moment of arrest where handcuffs were placed upon the wrists of the perpetrator, and there was never a formal reading of charges echoing through a police precinct. Consequently, there was no trial to meticulously dissect the events of that fatal summer night in Kailua Kona, meaning that no prosecutor ever stood before a judge to weave the circumstantial threads of her final hours into a legally binding tapestry of guilt. For the family and for the dedicated detectives who poured their souls into the initial inquiry, this absence of a judicial proceeding represents a unique and agonizing form of trauma, because a trial provides a structured environment for grief to transition into closure, allowing the victim to be publicly honored and the accused to be formally challenged in an open forum. Instead, the aftermath of Leilani's murder was characterized by an oppressive silence that stretched agonizingly across the decades, transforming an active pursuit of a killer into a dormant archive of unanswered questions housed within the quiet storage rooms of the Hawaii Police Department. As the calendar pages turned and the years bled into entirely new decades, the physical landscape of the Big Island transformed immensely, with the hospitality industry expanding and the transient population of the hotel, where she drew her final breaths, turning over millions of times effectively, burying the immediate physical memory of the crime beneath layers of modern development and the relentless march of time. Yet the legal and moral imperative to solve a murder is never truly extinguished by the mere passage of years, because the crime of taking a human life stands as the ultimate violation of societal order, an offense so profound that the state recognizes absolutely no statute of limitations for its prosecution. This enduring legal principle guarantees that the hunt for a killer can technically persist indefinitely, ensuring that a perpetrator can never simply outlive their culpability or find permanent sanctuary in the shadow of a cold case designation. Recognizing this solemn duty to the victims of the past and acknowledging the revolutionary advancements in forensic science that have transformed the landscape of criminal investigations, the Hawaii Police Department eventually established a highly specialized unsolved homicides division designed specifically to breathe new life into dormant investigations just like this one. The creation of this dedicated cold case unit represented a profound shift in the institutional approach to historical crimes, signaling a refusal to accept defeat and a commitment to leveraging modern methodologies against the mysteries of the past. The detectives assigned to this elite division are tasked with an incredibly daunting endeavor as they must step backward in time to reconstruct narratives that have been heavily eroded by the passing decades, requiring them to interpret ancient police reports, decipher faded handwritten notes, and navigate the fading memories of witnesses who have grown old or passed away. When the file of Leilani Castro Kim was prioritized and carefully extracted from the archives by these modern investigators, it was not merely an administrative review, but a complete resurrection of the hunt for her killer viewed through the highly advanced lens of contemporary criminal justice. The most critical and potentially transformative aspect of this modern review centers entirely around the physical evidence that was so painstakingly collected and preserved by the original detectives in the summer of 1978. Those initial investigators operating in an era entirely blind to the concept of genetic profiling unknowingly secured the key to the entire mystery when they cataloged the hair fibers and biological traces found within that horrific hotel bathroom scene. Today, the cold case detectives are undertaking the meticulous process of inventorying every single item of physical evidence associated with Leilani's murder, carefully assessing the degradation levels of the biological samples to determine if they can withstand the rigorous demands of modern DNA extraction techniques. The profound hope driving this exhaustive scientific review is that even a microscopic fragment of the killer's genetic material preserved in the dark archives for over 40 years might finally be isolated and amplified using cutting-edge forensic technology. If a viable DNA profile can be successfully extracted from the remnants of the 1978 crime scene, it would instantaneously bridge the massive gap of decades, providing investigators with an undeniable biological blueprint of the person who ended Leilani's life. Such a scientific breakthrough would allow the authorities to utilize powerful modern tools, including cross-referencing the genetic profile against vast national criminal databases and employing the revolutionary techniques of forensic genetic genealogy, which has successfully unmasked some of the most elusive perpetrators in modern history by tracing their family trees through public DNA repositories. The potential application of these advanced forensic tools completely alters the fundamental dynamics of the investigation, because the killer who successfully vanished into the transient crowds of Kailua Kona decades ago is no longer hiding merely from the local police, but from the undeniable reality of their own biology. This technological renaissance in criminal investigation has injected a renewed sense of urgency and genuine optimism into a case that had languished in obscurity for far too long, proving that the passage of time, which was once the killer's greatest ally, has now become a formidable weapon for law enforcement as science finally catches up to the evidence. In conjunction with these intense behind-the-scenes forensic evaluations, the Hawaii Police Department has also recognized the vital importance of re-engaging the public consciousness, acknowledging that the final missing piece of the puzzle might not reside in a laboratory, but in the hidden memories of someone who was present on the island during that fateful summer. Consequently, in August of 2024, the authorities made a strategic and highly publicized decision to officially reintroduce Leilani Castro Kim's case to the public, featuring her story prominently on their specialized platform dedicated to unsolved homicides. This deliberate public appeal was designed to cast a wide net across the community and beyond, specifically targeting individuals whose circumstances might have changed over the intervening 4 decades, potentially loosening loyalties, alleviating past fears of retaliation, or prompting a long overdue crisis of conscience. The police emphasize with unwavering clarity that absolutely no piece of information is considered too small or insignificant, because in the complex architecture of a cold case, a seemingly trivial observation about a strange interaction, a subtle change in someone's behavior, or an overheard Conversation from 1978 could serve as the vital linchpin that finally connects the modern forensic data to a specific human identity. This renewed public push serves as a powerful reminder to the perpetrator that the authorities have not forgotten the woman they murdered, and that the investigative net is currently being recast with stronger, more sophisticated materials than ever before. The psychological pressure exerted by this modern campaign is immense, as the killer must now live with the terrifying knowledge that their darkest secret is being actively pursued by dedicated professionals armed with scientific capabilities that were purely science fiction at the time the crime was committed. The current status of the investigation remains a delicate, high-stakes balancing act between the silent, meticulous work occurring inside forensic laboratories and the vocal, desperate pleas for public assistance echoing through the community. While there has still been no arrest and no formal charges have yet been filed, the narrative of the case has fundamentally shifted from a tragic story of a stalled investigation into an active, dynamic pursuit fueled by technological innovation and an unwavering institutional commitment to justice. The ultimate result of these modern efforts is yet to be determined, but the profound significance lies in the fact that the fight for Leilani's truth has been aggressively resumed, ensuring that her memory is honored not by passive mourning, but by a relentless active crusade to hold her killer accountable, regardless of how many decades have slipped away into history, leaving the door firmly open for the day when the silence of that hotel room is finally broken by the definitive, undeniable voice of justice demanding answers for a life that was so brutally and unfairly stolen away from a mother who was simply trying to build a better future for her beloved children in a place that was supposed to be a peaceful sanctuary, but ultimately transformed into a nightmare that the local community and the dedicated law enforcement officers of Hawaii will absolutely never allow to be forgotten or permanently erased from the historical record of the island. The devastating ripples of a violent crime extend far beyond the immediate physical boundaries of the crime scene and the tragic loss of the victim themselves, because the most profound and enduring damage is inflicted upon the innocent lives left behind to navigate a world that has been fundamentally and violently altered. For the three children of Leilani Castro Kim, the summer of 1978 marked the catastrophic end of their childhood innocence and the terrifying beginning of a lifelong journey shadowed by an incomprehensible void. When a mother is stolen from her family in such a brutal and sudden manner, the resulting trauma is entirely immeasurable, echoing through every subsequent milestone and ordinary moment of their lives. These children were forced to grow up in the agonizing absence of the woman who had fought so fiercely to build a better future for them, missing her comforting presence during graduations, weddings, and the quiet, everyday moments where a mother's guidance is most desperately needed. The pain of losing a parent is a universal human experience, but the grief endured by Leilani's family is uniquely suffocating because it is compounded by the terrifying, unresolved mystery of her untimely death. They have spent over 4 decades suspended in a cruel emotional purgatory, agonizing over the unanswered questions of who committed this atrocity and why their mother was targeted on that fateful summer night. This profound lack of closure means that their grieving process has never been allowed to naturally conclude, forcing them to carry the heavy, burdensome weight of injustice alongside their sorrow. The agonizing reality that the person responsible for destroying their family has potentially lived a full, unburdened life, while they have suffered in the dark, is a bitter pill that refuses to dissolve with the mere passage of time. The psychological toll of wondering if the killer was a stranger passing through the hotel or someone familiar who managed to hide their dark nature is a haunting burden that no family should ever be forced to endure. The burden of an unsolved murder creates a unique psychological phenomenon where the surviving family members are often forced to become amateur detectives in their own lives, constantly analyzing past interactions and wondering if they somehow overlooked a crucial clue that could have prevented the tragedy. The children of Leilani have had to navigate this labyrinth of grief, while simultaneously watching the rest of the world move forward, seemingly indifferent to the catastrophic loss that remains the defining epicenter of their existence. Every time a new true crime story breaks or a cold case is miraculously solved in the news, it serves as a painful double-edged sword, offering a brief surge of hope that their mother's case might be next, while simultaneously underscoring the agonizing reality that they are still trapped in the waiting room of justice. Society often struggles to comprehend the enduring nature of this specific type of grief, expecting the wounds to eventually heal with time, but the reality is that the wound remains forever open, continually aggravated by the absolute silence of the unknown. The erosion of time is a relentless and unforgiving force in the realm of cold case investigations, acting as a silent adversary that slowly strips away the fragile threads connecting the present to the past. Over the course of more than 40 years, the vibrant memories of the witnesses who were present at the Kona Hilton that summer have inevitably begun to fade, their once sharp recollections dulling into hazy impressions that are vulnerable to the distorting effects of age and suggestion. The physical landscape of Kailua Kona has transformed beyond recognition, with the hotel itself undergoing countless renovations and the transient population of 1978 scattering to the four winds, making it nearly impossible to retrace the exact physical steps of the killer. The investigators who initially walked the crime scene and dedicated their early careers to finding Leilani's murderer have retired, aged, and in many cases passed away, taking their intimate, unwritten knowledge of the investigation with them into history. The cruelest aspect of this temporal erosion is the terrifying possibility that the biological evidence meticulously collected at the scene might have slowly degraded in storage, losing the crucial genetic secrets necessary to identify the perpetrator. Yet despite this relentless march of time and the fading of human memory, a profound and resilient glimmer of hope refuses to be extinguished entirely, because the incredible advancements in modern forensic science offer a powerful countermeasure to the decay of the past. The emergence of forensic genetic genealogy and highly sensitive DNA extraction techniques has fundamentally rewritten the rules of criminal investigations, transforming forgotten biological traces into undeniable biological blueprints. If the samples preserved by the Hawaii Police Department have survived the decades intact, they possess the extraordinary potential to finally unmask the phantom who has evaded justice for so long, bypassing the need for human witnesses and speaking a silent, undeniable truth from the grave. This technological revolution means that the killer's greatest perceived advantage, their ability to remain hidden in the shadows of history, is rapidly evaporating under the piercing light of modern science. The knowledge that a single microscopic cell could be the key to unraveling a 40-year-old mystery provides a vital source of strength for the investigators and a desperately needed beacon of hope for Leilani's enduring family. The transition from the late 1970s to the present day has seen a massive cultural shift in how we process and consume stories of true crime, transforming personal tragedies into public narratives, but it is essential to fiercely guard the humanity of the victims at the center of these investigations. We must resist the urge to view Leilani's case merely as an intriguing puzzle to be solved, and instead recognize it as a profound moral failure that a violent predator was allowed to slip through the cracks of the justice system and escape the consequences of their horrific actions. The dedication of the Unsolved Homicides Division represents the best of our collective desire to right the wrongs of the past, proving that society has not entirely abandoned its obligation to protect the vulnerable and seek retribution for the fallen. The fact that detectives are currently utilizing advanced forensic genetic genealogy to re-examine the biological evidence offers a tantalizing possibility that the killer's own DNA might ultimately serve as the instrument of their long overdue downfall. This scientific justice is poetic in its execution, turning the microscopic remnants of the crime into an inescapable web that spans across generations and geography to finally ensnare the guilty party. The resolution of this case would not erase the decades of suffering endured by Leilani's family, nor would it miraculously restore the stolen years, but it would provide a definitive, undeniable answer to the haunting question of who, and it would finally close the terrifying chapter that began in that hotel room. It would offer a powerful validation of their enduring pain and a societal acknowledgement that their mother's life held profound value that was worth fighting for across the expanse of 40 long years. The case of Leilani Castro Kim is a stark, heartbreaking reminder that behind every faded police report and every forgotten headline there is a profoundly human story of a life interrupted and a family shattered. Leilani was not merely a statistic in a cold case file. She was a vibrant, ambitious, and deeply loving woman who was actively striving to create a sanctuary for her children in a world that ultimately failed to protect her. Her legacy should not be defined by the brutal violence of her final moments, but by the incredible strength she displayed in life, the entrepreneurial spirit she brought to her business endeavors, and the unwavering devotion she held for her family. As the Hawaii Police Department continues its renewed and determined push to finally solve this case, they are not just seeking to close an open file, they are fighting to restore a sense of universal balance and to ensure that a mother's stolen future is met with absolute accountability. The public appeal for information remains a critical component of this ongoing crusade, a desperate plea across the decades for anyone holding even a fragment of the truth to finally step forward and shatter the wall of silence. We must remember that the passage of time does not diminish the severity of the crime, nor does it lessen the fundamental human right to justice. It only amplifies the urgent necessity to speak for those who can no longer speak for themselves. The shadow that fell over the Kona Hilton in the summer of 1978 will only be lifted when the light of truth is finally allowed to shine upon the hidden face of the killer, bringing a long overdue sense of peace to a family that has waited an entire lifetime for answers to this terrible crime today. The profound impact of an unsolved murder on a tight-knit community like Kailua Kona cannot be overstated, because it fundamentally alters the collective psyche of the people who call that paradise their home, and it introduces a lingering element of distrust into an environment that was historically defined by its warm hospitality and deep social interconnectedness. When a killer strikes within a massive luxury resort and successfully vanishes without leaving a definitive trace, it sends a chilling message to local residents that the safety they have always taken for granted is incredibly fragile and easily shattered by unseen forces. This underlying anxiety is compounded by the terrifying realization that the perpetrator might not be a transient stranger who immediately fled the island, but could instead be someone who embedded themselves back into the fabric of the community successfully, masking their dark nature behind a facade of normalcy. For over 4 decades, the psychological weight of this possibility forces neighbors to occasionally look at one another with fleeting suspicion, wondering if the person standing next to them in the grocery store or sitting beside them at a local diner could secretly harbor the darkest of all possible human secrets. Forever, the generational trauma inflicted by the murder of Leilani Castro Kim extends far beyond her immediate family and deeply touches the lives of the original investigators who dedicated their youth to chasing a phantom, carrying the immense burden of their perceived failure into their retirement and often to their graves. These dedicated public servants spent countless sleepless nights staring at the ceiling and mentally replaying every single step of the investigation, torturing themselves with the agonizing question of whether they missed a microscopic detail, a subtle inconsistency in a witness statement, or a seemingly insignificant piece of physical evidence. Then the evolution of Kailua Kona from a quiet coastal retreat in the late 1970s to a bustling modern tourist destination has paradoxically both hindered and helped the ongoing quest for justice in this heartbreaking case, because while the physical landscape has changed and many of the original witnesses have passed away, the technological landscape has transformed in ways that the original detectives could only have dreamed of. The relentless march of progress has provided contemporary law enforcement with an arsenal of sophisticated scientific tools that possess the miraculous ability to extract profound truths from the smallest biological fragments. Today, the public reopening of the investigation in August of 2024 by the Hawaii Police Department represents a powerful declaration that the passage of time will absolutely not be permitted to grant amnesty to a murderer, and that the institutional memory of law enforcement is long unyielding and totally committed to righting the wrongs of the past by strategically leveraging the immense power of the internet and modern true crime platforms. The authorities have successfully amplified this vital story, projecting it far beyond the shores of the Big Island and into the global consciousness, seeking the exact right person. This deliberate strategy recognizes that the ultimate key to solving this 40-year-old mystery may not currently reside within the sterile confines of a forensic laboratory, but might instead be locked away in the suppressed memory of an aging individual who has spent decades wrestling with a heavy conscience. Perhaps it is someone who noticed a subtle, unexplainable change in a close family member behavior during the summer of 1978, or someone who overheard a drunken confession that they previously dismissed as a dark joke, but which has secretly haunted their quietest moments ever since. That year, the profound silence that has surrounded this case for so long is not an impenetrable fortress, but rather a fragile structure built on fear, misplaced loyalty, or willful ignorance, and it only requires a single moment of immense courage from one person to send that entire structure crumbling. Down into the dust of history, the authorities are acutely aware that relationships change over the span of 4 decades, meaning that a spouse who previously provided a false alibi out of fear might now be a widow seeking spiritual redemption, or a friend who remained silent might finally realize the truth. As the dedicated detectives of the modern Unsolved Homicides Division continue to meticulously pore over the historical case files and aggressively apply the latest advancements in forensic genetic genealogy to the preserved evidence, they are engaging in a sacred duty to ensure that Leilani Castro Kim is remembered not just as a victim but as a human being whose life demanded respect. Their tireless efforts serve as a stark warning to the killer that the shadows in which they have hidden for so long are rapidly shrinking, and that the long arc of justice is bending toward absolute accountability. Finally, the pursuit of justice in a cold case of this magnitude is a testament to the enduring value that society places on a single human life, reinforcing the fundamental principle that no one is allowed to violently extinguish another human existence and simply walk away without facing the absolute maximum severity of consequences. We must continue to speak her name and share the tragic details of her story, because public awareness is the ultimate enemy of the forgotten, and every time her case is discussed it generates a new wave of pressure that makes it incredibly difficult for the killer to simply accept that a brutal murder can remain unsolved indefinitely is to accept a profound failure of the social contract, and to tell the innocent children of Leilani that their mother was somehow less important than the logistical challenges of a difficult investigation. Which is an entirely unacceptable conclusion for any civilized society. The incredible resilience shown by her family over the past 40 years is a heartbreaking but deeply inspiring demonstration of the human mind and capacity to endure unimaginable pain while refusing to surrender the fundamental hope that truth will eventually conquer the darkest of all deceptions. Every single piece of physical evidence that was carefully collected from the blood-stained bathroom of the Kona Hilton in the summer of 1978 represents a silent witness that has patiently waited in the dark for science to evolve to a point where its testimony can finally be heard and understood by a jury. The thought that microscopic traces of genetic material might soon provide a definitive name and a physical face to the monster who stole Leilani away is a powerful source of motivation that drives the current investigation forward. With a completely renewed sense of immense purpose, it is our collective responsibility to ensure that the tragic fate of Leilani Castro Kim remains a vibrant part of the public discourse, preventing her case from slipping back into the dusty archives, and demanding that the resources necessary to fully leverage modern forensic technology are continuously allocated to this deeply important investigation. The community of Kailua Kona and the broader population of Hawaii owe it to her memory to remain vigilant, to question the past, and to report even the most seemingly insignificant details to the authorities, because the smallest pebble of information can often trigger an avalanche. Today, the stark reality is that the person who committed this heinous act has stolen over 40 years of life that rightfully belonged to a loving mother, an ambitious professional, and a woman who is just beginning to realize the beautiful potential of her hard-fought independence and her completely rebuilt personal reality. The killer has experienced the warmth of countless Hawaiian sunrises, celebrated holidays, and navigated the natural progression of a full life, while her timeline was violently frozen on the last day of July 1978, leaving her family to navigate a world shattered by terrible loss forever. This profound inequity is the absolute beating heart of the ongoing demand for justice, because the universe demands balance, and the only way to restore that Equilibrium is to drag the perpetrator out of the comfortable obscurity they have enjoyed and force them to answer for the unimaginable destruction they caused so long ago. The relentless pursuit of this cold case is a powerful declaration that the passage of time does not wash away the blood of the innocent, and that the moral imperative to seek the truth remains absolutely untarnished by the turning of the calendar pages over decades. As we reflect on the tragically beautiful life of Leilani Castro Kim, we must always remain steadfast in our hope that the incredible dedication of the cold case, detectives combined with the miraculous capabilities of modern science, will finally succeed in identifying the person who committed this terrible crime and bringing them to real justice. The story of what happened at the Kona Hilton is not yet fully written, and the final chapter will only be complete when the silence is permanently broken and the lingering shadows of the past are entirely banished by the undeniable absolute light of truth. The persistent shadow of an unsolved murder casts a long and freezing darkness over the vibrant landscape of a tropical paradise, serving as a relentless reminder that absolute safety is a fragile illusion even in the most idyllic corners of the world, because the brutal reality of what happened to Leilani Castro Kim completely shattered the peaceful facade of Kailua Kona, leaving behind a permanent psychological scar on the community that continues to throb with unresolved pain over 4 decades later. The memory of that summer in 1978 remains an open wound that refuses to heal naturally today. For the dedicated professionals within the Hawaii Police Department, the failure to immediately apprehend the individual responsible for such a horrific act of violence was not merely a professional setback, but a profound emotional burden that many investigators carried with them for the remainder of their lives as they meticulously documented every fingerprint, every stray fiber, and every biological trace found within that bloodstained hotel room. They could not have possibly anticipated that their exhaustive efforts would ultimately be suspended in time, waiting patiently for generations of technological advancement to finally unlock the genetic secrets hidden within their evidence files. The sheer volume of human traffic moving through the Kona Hilton during the peak of the tourist season created an impenetrable logistical nightmare for those early detectives who were forced to navigate a chaotic maze of transient vacationers, temporary staff members, and anonymous visitors without the modern luxury of digital surveillance cameras or computerized guest registries, meaning that the killer was afforded the terrifying advantage of simply blending into the endless sea of faces and quietly walking away from the devastation they had just orchestrated, leaving a devoted mother dead in a bathtub while they returned to their normal routine. This agonizing lack of immediate resolution forced the 3 young children into a cruel and unforgiving reality where they were required to navigate the complex challenges of growing up without the foundational support of their mother, while simultaneously wrestling with the terrifying knowledge that the monster who destroyed their family was still out there walking freely beneath the exact same Hawaiian sun. This unique brand of psychological torture is the defining characteristic of a cold case because it denies the surviving victims the fundamental right to closure, forcing them to perpetually exist in a state of suspended emotional animation forever. The decision to uproot her life and move across the island from Hilo to Kailua Kona was a deeply courageous act of reinvention for Leilani, who was determined to build a completely new and prosperous chapter for her family. Following the dissolution of her marriage to John Sain Kim, she possessed a brilliant entrepreneurial spirit, having previously managed her own jewelry business at the Hilo Mall and having achieved remarkable success as an insurance sales agent, demonstrating a formidable combination of sharp business acumen and exceptional interpersonal skills that made her perfectly suited for the demanding hospitality management industry. Today, when she accepted the position at the Kona Hilton and began her intensive training to become a front desk assistant manager, she was operating at the absolute peak of her professional capabilities, fully dedicated to mastering the intricate operations of the massive luxury resort and securing a stable financial future for her beloved children. Her decision to temporarily reside within a designated room on the hotel property was a practical sacrifice made entirely in the pursuit of this noble goal, making the tragic irony of her murder occurring within that supposedly secure sanctuary all the more devastating and deeply cruel. Just days before her life was violently intercepted, she attended a joyous gathering with former high school classmates. presenting a vibrant and completely optimistic picture of a woman who is eagerly looking forward to the future without displaying even the slightest indication of fear, distress, or anxiety, which stands as a chilling testament to the unpredictable and sudden nature of the violence that claimed her life, because nobody in her extensive social or professional circles recognized any warning signs or red flags, suggesting that she was being targeted by a predator who was silently closing in on her location. Today, the agonizing transition of this active homicide investigation into a dormant cold case was a gradual and deeply frustrating process characterized by the systematic exhaustion of every available lead, the dead ends of countless witness interviews, and the heartbreaking realization that the circumstantial evidence was simply insufficient to meet the high legal threshold required for a formal prosecution, leaving the authorities trapped in a paralyzing limbo where they possessed a deep understanding of the tragedy, but absolutely no legal mechanism to hold anyone accountable for the brutal destruction of a bright and promising future that was just beginning right there. However, the creation of the Unsolved Homicides Division by the Hawaii Police Department represents a powerful institutional refusal to accept this terrifying status quo, signaling a renewed commitment to aggressively pursuing justice, regardless of how much time has passed since the crime was committed. These modern investigators are tasked with the monumental challenge of stepping backward through time, meticulously reevaluating the historical evidence files and desperately searching for any microscopic fragments of biological material that might have miraculously survived the natural degradation process over the past 4 decades in order to subject them to revolutionary forensic DNA analysis techniques. Immediately, the advent of forensic genetic genealogy has fundamentally transformed the landscape of criminal justice, providing detectives with an incredibly powerful tool that can successfully bypass the faded memories of human witnesses and directly interrogate the biological blueprint of the killer, tracing their ancestral lineage through public databases to ultimately reveal their hidden identity. This technological renaissance offers a profound glimmer of hope for the family, suggesting that the very evidence collected by the frustrated detectives of 1978 might finally serve as the undeniable instrument of that long-overdue downfall, bringing an absolute end to this horrific, enduring mystery. The recent public appeal launched by the authorities in August of 2024 is a strategic maneuver designed to leverage the immense power of community awareness, acknowledging that the final missing piece of this complex puzzle might be locked away within the suppressed memory of an individual who has remained silent out of fear, misplaced loyalty, or a failure to recognize the true significance of a seemingly trivial observation made during that fateful summer. The police are urgently broadcasting the message that absolutely no detail is too small, and that a single anonymous tip could be the absolute breakthrough. The relentless passage of time is a cruel adversary in any cold case, slowly erasing the physical footprints of the crime and inevitably claiming the lives of crucial witnesses, but it also possesses a strange power to alter human relationships and dissolve the bonds of fear that may have previously protected a murderer, meaning that someone who was once terrified into silence might now find the immense courage required to finally step forward and share the dark truth they have harbored for over 40 years, bringing a long-awaited sense of clarity to a family drowning in endless, painful questions. The psychological pressure exerted upon the killer by this renewed investigation must be absolutely suffocating, as they are forced to confront the terrifying reality that the scientific methods available today are exponentially more sophisticated than anything that existed when they committed their crime, and that their darkest secret is actively being hunted by dedicated professionals who will absolutely never stop searching for the truth. The perpetrator can no longer rely on the sheer anonymity of the crowds or the fading of local memory, because their own genetic material has become a ticking time bomb waiting to expose their guilt entirely. We must continuously strive to remember Leilani Castro Kim not merely as the tragic victim of a brutal and unsolved homicide, but as a vibrant, fiercely independent, and deeply loving mother who dedicated her entire existence to creating a safe and prosperous environment for her 3 children. Her legacy is defined by her remarkable resilience, her impressive professional ambition, and the incredible warmth she shared with everyone she encountered throughout her life, making the sudden and violent theft of her future an unforgivable offense against the fundamental values of humanity. And a completely unacceptable failure of the modern justice system, the ongoing struggle to solve this 40-year-old mystery is a profound testament to the enduring human demand for absolute accountability, proving that a civilized society cannot and will not simply discard the memory of a stolen life just because the path to justice is obstructed by the immense logistical challenges of time and the tragic limitations of historical forensic science. We are morally obligated to continue shining a piercing light into the dark corners of the past, demanding that every available resource is utilized to finally unmask the phantom who has evaded consequence for far too long. Today, the relentless progression of time has an undeniable capacity to alter the physical world around us, transforming the once familiar corridors of the Kona Hilton and the bustling streets of Kailua Kona into an environment that the residents of 1978 might barely recognize today. But for the grieving family of Leilani Castro Kim, this immense passage of over 4 decades has essentially felt like a single agonizingly long and continuous day of waiting for a resolution that has tragically never arrived, because the psychological phenomenon of ambiguous loss dictates that without definitive answers, the grieving process is perpetually stalled, forcing her 3 innocent children to carry the agonizingly heavy burden of their mother's unsolved murder through every single milestone of their own lives, encompassing graduations, weddings, and the quiet, everyday moments where her nurturing presence was most desperately required and profoundly missed, making their survival a testament to incredible resilience in the face of an unimaginable and completely unfair tragedy that was forced upon them by a killer who has managed to evade the consequences of their horrific actions for an entire lifetime, leaving a toxic legacy of injustice that fundamentally challenges our societal understanding of morality and the absolute necessity of legal accountability for violent crimes committed against innocent individuals who were simply striving to build a better future for their loved ones, just as Leilani was actively doing when she made the courageous decision to finalize her divorce from John Sain Kim and relocate her entire life across the island from Hilo to the vibrant Western coast in search of fresh opportunities and a renewed sense of personal stability that was ultimately and brutally stolen from her within the supposedly safe confines of her temporary hotel accommodations on the tragic morning of August 1st, 1978, when she was discovered lifeless in the bathtub by concerned hotel management personnel who had noticed her highly uncharacteristic absence from her scheduled front desk training shift, thereby initiating a frantic but ultimately frustrated law enforcement investigation that would span across multiple generations without ever producing a viable suspect or yielding a much-needed confession to alleviate the suffering of the survivors who were left completely in the dark regarding the specific terrifying circumstances of her final moments on Earth, since the Hawaii Police Department has strictly and rightfully maintained a tight seal on the sensitive forensic details of the crime scene, including the specific cause of death, the exact nature of her injuries, and any potential murder weapon, in order to protect the absolute integrity of the ongoing investigation against false confessions and to ensure that only the true perpetrator possesses the complete and horrifying knowledge of what actually transpired in that room on that fatal summer night. The profound tragedy of the initial investigation lies entirely in the historical context of the era, because the dedicated detectives who originally responded to the crime scene and meticulously collected the available physical evidence, including latent fingerprints, scattered hair and fiber samples, and crucial biological traces, were operating in an investigative landscape that was completely devoid of modern DNA technology, leaving them scientifically blind to the genetic secrets that were hidden directly within their grasp, forcing them to rely on traditional interrogations of hotel guests, co-workers, and personal acquaintances, which ultimately failed to bridge the evidentiary gap required for a formal prosecution, leading to the agonizing classification of the murder as a cold case. But the extraordinary and rapid evolution of forensic science over the intervening decades has fundamentally shifted the balance of power back toward law enforcement, offering a miraculous beacon of hope that the microscopic evidence carefully preserved in the police archives might finally yield the undeniable biological blueprint of the killer through the application of advanced extraction techniques and revolutionary forensic genetic genealogy, which has the unprecedented capability to bypass fading human memories and directly trace the ancestral lineage of an unidentified suspect, thereby transforming the passage of time from the killer's greatest ally into their most terrifying and inescapable adversary, as the modern investigators of the Unsolved Homicides Division systematically inventory the historical evidence and aggressively explore every possible avenue to extract a viable DNA profile that could instantly unmask the phantom who has haunted this community for over 40 years, proving that the commitment to justice does not expire with the turning of the calendar pages and that the authorities remain absolutely determined to leverage every single available technological advancement to hold the perpetrator fully accountable for the destruction of Leilani's beautiful and highly promising life, which was characterized by her remarkable entrepreneurial spirit, her successful tenure as a jewelry store owner at the Hilo Mall, and her outstanding achievements as a top-performing insurance sales agent, all of which demonstrated her incredible work ethic, her innate sociability, and her fierce dedication to providing a secure environment for her children before her journey was so violently and unfairly interrupted just as she was stepping into an exciting new management role at one of the premier luxury resorts on the island, where she had quickly earned the respect and admiration of her new colleagues who never witnessed any signs of distress or danger in the days leading up to her murder, including her completely normal and joyful attendance at a recent high school reunion where she celebrated her past while looking eagerly toward a future that she would tragically never be allowed to experience. The strategic decision by the Hawaii Police Department to officially reopen the files and prominently feature Leilani's tragic story on their dedicated Unsolved Homicides platform in August of 2024 represents a powerful and highly calculated effort to re-engage the public consciousness and explicitly remind the global community that this investigation is actively ongoing and that the search for the truth remains a paramount priority for the authorities, who understand that the final crucial piece of this complex investigative puzzle might currently reside within the suppressed memories of an aging witness who has remained entirely silent for decades out of fear, misplaced loyalty, or a failure to recognize the true significance of a seemingly trivial observation made during that chaotic summer of 1978, prompting law enforcement to cast a wide and desperate net across the public sphere, urging anyone with even the slightest fragment of information regarding unusual behaviors, suspicious individuals, or unexplainable events in the vicinity of the Kona Hilton to finally step forward and share their knowledge, because a single piece of newly revealed information, when combined with the miraculous capabilities of modern forensic science, could be the exact catalyst required to shatter the wall of silence and finally bring the killer out of the shadows, forcing them to confront the devastating reality of the pain they have caused and the innocent lives they have permanently altered through their monstrous actions, while simultaneously sending a chilling and unmistakable message to the perpetrator that they are actively being hunted by a dedicated team of professionals who possess scientific tools that were completely unimaginable at the time the crime was committed, ensuring that the psychological burden of their guilt is amplified by the constant terrifying paranoia that their own preserved genetic material is currently being analyzed in a laboratory setting, waiting to expose their identity to the world and completely dismantle the comfortable lie of a life they have lived in the aftermath of the murder, proving that there is truly no permanent sanctuary for those who commit such heinous acts of violence, and that the long arc of the moral universe will ultimately bend toward absolute justice for Leilani and her grieving family, who deserve nothing less than the complete and unvarnished truth regarding the theft of their mother's life and the definitive punishment of the individual responsible for inflicting such an immeasurable and enduring trauma upon their innocent hearts. As we continuously reflect upon the heartbreaking details of this 46-year-old mystery, it is absolutely imperative that we actively resist the natural human tendency to view Leilani merely as a two-dimensional victim embedded within the sterile pages of a forgotten police report, and instead consciously choose to remember her as the vibrant, ambitious, and deeply loving woman that she truly was, celebrating her immense courage in seeking a fresh start, her fierce dedication to her 3 children, and her undeniable capacity for hard work and professional success, which made her an incredibly valuable member of the community and a shining example of maternal resilience in the face of profound personal transitions, demanding that we honor her enduring legacy, not by succumbing to despair over the length of time that has passed without an arrest, but by maintaining an unwavering and vocal demand for accountability, supporting the tireless efforts of the Unsolved Homicides Division, and actively participating in the public search for answers by sharing her story, keeping her memory alive, and ensuring that the person who violently extinguished her bright future is never allowed to sleep peacefully in the false assumption that their crime has been permanently forgotten, because the spirit of justice is absolutely relentless, and the community of Kailua Kona, alongside the dedicated law enforcement officers of Hawaii, will never abandon their solemn duty to uncover the truth, to shatter the silence of that hotel room, and to finally deliver the long-awaited resolution that Leilani Castro Kim and her beautiful family have so desperately deserved for their entire lives. The agonizing reality that a violent predator was capable of successfully navigating the highly populated and heavily trafficked environment of the Kona Hilton Hotel without leaving a definitive trail of recognizable evidence or being clearly identified by a direct witness speaks volumes about the chaotic and transient nature of the hospitality industry during that specific historical period, where the constant, unregulated flow of thousands of anonymous tourists and busy staff members created the perfect camouflage for a killer to strike with absolute impunity and immediately vanish into the surrounding tropical landscape, leaving the frustrated initial investigators to endlessly chase shadows and constantly collide with the insurmountable logistical bottlenecks of an era entirely lacking in modern digital surveillance infrastructure, which has fundamentally transformed the way modern society investigates and ultimately solves complex criminal activities, highlighting the profound tragedy that Leilani was murdered in a time before these protective technologies existed, leaving her family completely reliant on the slow and often unreliable process of circumstantial deduction, which ultimately failed to provide the necessary legal foundation for a successful prosecution, thus cementing the case in a deeply frustrating state of suspended animation for decades on end. But the sheer passage of time does not in any way diminish the profound moral imperative to seek retribution for the taking of an innocent life, because the fundamental laws of human decency dictate that a society must never accept the permanent evasion of justice, regardless of the terrifying obstacles presented by fading memories, disappearing witnesses, or the natural degradation of physical environments over the course of nearly half a century, requiring a continuous and unwavering commitment from both the authorities and the general public to keep the flame of this investigation burning brightly in the face of overwhelming historical odds, and to perpetually challenge the comfortable anonymity of the perpetrator who has stolen over 40 years of life that rightfully belonged to a woman who was actively striving to build a beautiful and secure sanctuary for her family in a place that was universally renowned for its peaceful beauty and welcoming hospitality, but which ultimately served as the tragic backdrop for the most horrific and entirely unexplainable moment of her entire existence, forever altering the collective consciousness of the local community and leaving a permanent stain of unresolved grief upon the beautiful shores of the Big Island that can only be cleansed by the definitive identification and rigorous prosecution of the individual who chose to end her life on that fateful summer night in 1978.